some stories don't belong in police reports. I suppose that's why I never wrote a word about what happened at Shawnee Amusement Park. That dying patch of broken rides and blackened woods at the edge of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It wasn't for lack of any evidence, or lack of bodies. It just wouldn't have survived the light. Nobody would have believed me. I was already inside the park before midnight on October 13th, 2017, hunching past the battered ticket booth. A kaleidoscope of shattered glass and smeared graffiti plastered it. I'd swiped my uniform for plain clothes that night, and I'd drawn the short straw, sent a check on a string of disappearances tied back to this unholy place. County brass couldn't shake the rumors, the disappearances, the animal mutilations, and the whispers of some old folk devil crawling out from the earth itself. Call it creepypasta, folklore, or even Reddit bullshit. But I followed orders as a good detective. Hell, I always did. The wind whipped past through the branches overhead, creating an uneasy rattle. Oaks hedged like black sentinels, hemmed in the old Ferris wheel and the tangle of cheap plushy prizes rotting behind torn tarps. Neon-colored teddy bears and plastic dolls, with their eyes eaten away by sun and time. My flashlight beam traced a path through the puddles, splashing up on my boots. It was so quiet, you could hear your own pulse. And it must have been 35 degrees that night, but the sweat crawled down my back all the same. The local folklore about this place, the Shawnee Amusement Park, well, it went back decades. They found a migrant worker in '86, or what was left. The legs still on the tracks, the rest scattered in the tunnel of love. Officially, it was grounds for closure. Unofficially, something else was seen walking off into those woods that night. Somewhere close, a rusted metal groaned with the shifting in the wind. I stopped. My flashlight skimmed over a glint of red, and at first, I thought it might have been an abandoned coat twisted in the tall grass. But as I stepped closer, I realized it was half a mutilated deer, or less than half. Its broken limbs, the back snapped, fur matted with dead flies, maggots, and blood. The entrails spilled onto the ground in tangled red ropes. The neck had been twisted nearly full circle. I'd handled enough wildlife calls in my time with the department. I've even seen the aftermath of a mountain lion once. An unfortunate young boy mauled and hung from a tree branch. But this was a lot messier. What settled me most, though, there wasn't much blood on the ground. The grass underneath looked like it was licked clean. At the edge of the corpse, the ground had been disturbed. I crouched, breath fogging the air around me. 3 prints, clear as day, splayed like a human hand, although the long digits were bent backwards. Claws or even stubby nails burrowed several inches deep into the muck. The soil caved in at the palms, as if something had dragged itself forward, away from the kill toward an old row of storage shacks. I've trained myself to explain, not speculate, but nothing about this fit explanation, or any earthly predator. I forced myself up, my knees cracking loud in the quiet. The path ran between the funhouse and the game stalls. My radio crackled just once, and then silenced. I left my backup at the cruiser, and I felt that mistake in my guts. Behind the midway, I made my way toward the old maintenance sheds. Some doors hung open, yawning into blackness, others broken at the hinges, as if hammered off in an attempt to keep them open. I kept my hand near the grip of my service weapon, and yet I pressed forward. Professional habit, pride, or stubbornness, and probably at some primal level, complete fear. I followed the trail and rounded the carousel and stopped dead in my tracks. Something was hunched by the ride. My flashlight hit bone-white skin, mottled and raw. Its arms were bent backwards, its joints in reverse, nails thick and filthy. It froze and lifted its head. Its face was a complete fucking ruin. I stood there silently trying to figure out what the hell I was just looking at. The thing's jaw gaped open, but otherwise it was featureless except for those milky eyes. The thing scuttled quickly backwards on those broken arms, teeth bared in something like a smile. Now I don't remember drawing my weapon. The next thing I knew, the cold steel was heavy in my hand, half raised like it might scare off whatever had just hit itself into the shadows by the carousel. Now years back as a rookie, they drilled us on tunnel vision. Hell, they drilled us. You know, how fear would deafen your ears first, then your sense of time. And they were right. I stood there, my pulse echoing up behind my ears, eyes trying to cut through the dark for any sign of movement. Now let's not pretend I'm a hero. Hell, I was shaking hardcore, and I can admit that now. Shawnee's forgotten midway, its clatter and lights replaced by rotted timbers, graffiti, and that creeping hush seemed to close in all at once at that point. My light swept the cracked asphalt, finding scraps of carnival detritus, a half-buried horseshoe, a broken snow globe leaking glitter, pink tufts of insulation, clinging to everything like pink mold. I moved toward the game stalls, one methodical step after the next. No radio, no backup, just a little voice in my head telling me, "You shouldn't be here, detective." Another figure moved into my flashlight beam. It wasn't the thing that I'd seen hiding near the carousel, but for a split second, it almost looked like a pale, hideously deformed child. I reacted on instinct and called out, "Police! Show me your hands." And the thing froze, and then, quicker than anything I'd ever seen before, it darted under the booth on all fours. I ducked down, squinting into the crawl space beneath the sagging wood. The beam of my light snagged on a rat's nest of bones. Raccoons, rabbits, hell, maybe even a dog. Picked clean, snapped in half, all jumbled together, but I couldn't see the creature I was just pursuing. I slowly pivoted, wiping my palm against my jeans. With my nerves now completely shot, I made my way toward the service alley, toward the haunted house. The fake cobwebs still drooped off of the doorframe, gray with age. The ghost painted on the sign had his cartoon mouth split into a black scream. And that's when I found it. There, by the clown cutout, knocked half into the weeds. Another handprint, this one pressed hard into the mud. No animal did this. I knelt, inspecting the print. 4 long fingers, again, all jointed backward, its thumb twisted nearly under the palm, each digit ending in a crushed, rounded pad like a mole's digging claw. The wet clay was gouged deep and packed tight. From inside the haunted house, the boards creaked, a low, throaty sound. I'd heard death rattles, battered lungs, even the dying sprawl of wounded animals, but this was different. I slowly inched toward the doorway, and I took a peek inside. It was pitch black, except for where my flashlight managed to shine on faded horror props. An axe-murderer mannequin, its glass eyes missing, bats dangling limply from fishing line from the ceiling, and the far end, just past the cheaply made Frankenstein, I caught a glimpse of something moving away from me. With my gun drawn and held up, I stepped carefully inside. I kept to the left wall, slowly creeping and trying to rely on stealth. On the ground, smeared across the linoleum, was a trail of fresh blood, bright as a traffic cone under the flashlight's glare. The stink of copper hit me, then the sound again, a scraping and a soft, wet cough. I hesitated, the blood freezing in my veins. And just then, something burst from the shadows. A snarl and a flash of claws, the same sick figure from before, contorting with desperate animal speed. It barreled past me, lopping on those hyperextended arms, skin stretching over bones too long to be human. I fired twice, the shots landing with meat-thick thuds into the wall, the doorway splitting sideways as the thing vanished into the black rain outside. No blood, not a drop, just those prints and a scraping echo fading farther and farther away into the unnatural dark, and the knowledge churning loud and hot in my gut that a creature that was perhaps old and definitely hungry was in these woods with me tonight. Now maybe it's some failure of instinct, or maybe it's just stubborn, stupid curiosity layered over my training. But I forced my legs to move after it, out through the warped hallway and into the open again. The rain started, thin and persistent, splattering the old midway. I paused at the carousel's edge, scanning for any sign of where the creature could have slipped away. The old horses spun lazily, pushed by the storm. My light caught movement at the whirligig, and something pale dragged along the ground, smearing mud and streaks. I followed, my boots silent on the spongy plywood. There, a break in the fence toward the woods. Branches reached in, scratching at my coat, and me slipping through, I squinted into a wall of shadow, the muck sucking at my shoes. The first 30 yards were easy, but then the ground dropped away, steep and slick, and I had to brace one palm beside me to keep steady. And that's where I found the shallow pit, half covered with rotted plywood. The hole was maybe 6 feet deep, lined with snags of fur and broken sticks, and in the beam of the flashlight, dozens of tiny bones gleamed from the soil. Animal mostly, but I saw a shoe too. Red canvas, chucks, perhaps a child's size. Lightning busted open a map of branches overhead, illuminating the woods in one perfect gut-hollowing frame. And for a breath, I saw it again, hunched over the lip of the pit, its teeth bared, gnawing at something. Its head shot up looking at me, and the thing scuttled backward into a thicket. No sound at all when it ran, and that's what unsettled me the most. Well, that and how damn fast it was. A second later, another smaller creature, low to the ground and half obscured by falling rain, its back arching as it scrabbled under the boards behind the whirligig. The light caught the reflection in its eyes, and I stared at it. I then ducked behind a toppled wooden cutout, a clown missing its paint and half of its face, and I tried not to breathe too loud. But something shifted just beyond my reach. It struck me then that I underestimated this thing, or things, plural. Not a lone, desperate animal, but perhaps something with an intelligence, something that adapted life here, that nested and bred here. Thunder cracked overhead. It was a close one, and for a moment, I saw both of them, parent and offspring. Their twisted arms, their backs hunched, nails black and coated with mud. The bigger one's mouth spread wide, its jaws flexing, and if it made a sound, I didn't hear it over the sound of the rain. I fired once and then twice, blind shots into the thicket. They scattered fast. The brush that they ran into rustled and then stilled. Cold rain then drove me to a crouch as I tried to get a better position, but a deep sense told me I might have been herded. I stayed crouched there for a stretch, waiting for my nerves to let me move again. The rain slicked upon my jacket, and it left me shivering. The woods behind the park, the ones even daylight never really touched, were completely obscured in shadow. See, that's the part where city cops never really get. These rural places, They're dark, and they're creepy as hell. There are long open spaces that leave you vulnerable without cover, except for trees. And Shawnee's patch of Appalachian creepiness wasn't the exception. As I crouched there, taking everything in, I noticed a rusted swing set. Next, the remnants of a bonfire, bones poking from black ash. Human bones. I know them when I see them. Not a fresh camp, though, but I wonder why it hadn't been checked out before. I mean, certainly there had to be urbexers here at some point or another. I gently brushed away the cinders to find a badge. One of ours. County issue. The name was worn smooth and it was bent out of shape. I wondered, had there been another idiot sent here before me? I mean, I never heard of any record or word of an officer sent out here to investigate. But files can and do vanish. And that's when the stench hit me. I did my best not to retch. I wiped the back of my free hand across my mouth. And as I slowly approached the ash, I saw a child's sock. It was blue with little stars that were still visible. And a white human jawbone. Something moved at the edge of the clearing, an impression just outside of my light. And I felt like the creature was watching me. The creature had moved slightly closer, half crawling on ruined limbs. The little one joined it, and my grip tightened on the gun. I saw them just enough. They were grotesque, their skin almost translucent over blue-black veins and swollen joints. Tiny pustules covered in a sheen of blood covered most of their skin. They were, for lack of a better term, horrific in the din of the night and the shine of my flashlight. They walked backwards on clawed hands that worked the dirt. Old scars or burns ran across their bodies, perhaps from 100 failed escapes. Or attacks. Back off. I managed, though. It sounded ridiculous. Then, with a jerky lunge, the bigger one closed the gap. I raised the gun and snapped off a shot, but my aim was off and it struck a tree behind it and sent a few chunks of wood into the downpour. The creature flinched, but it didn't scatter. They both circled, driving me backward to the edge of the clearing. I backed up with nowhere else to go. The smaller one had blocked my exit. The other creature hovered in the periphery, skulking just outside the thin and flickering arc of my flashlight. And without warning, the smaller one darted forward, spindly limbs flashing in the wet light. The big one followed, its arms flexing backward, the knuckles spitting up mud from the ground. I fired again and caught the smaller one square in the shoulder. Blood splattered from its flesh, leaving a nice quarter-sized shaped gaping hole. And for a millisecond it howled a thin, torn cry that you'd probably mistake for a fox. It rolled and then vanished into the brush so quick that even my flashlight lost its trail. The larger one leaned forward, mouth rocking up and down like it was adjusting its jaw. She closed in on the clearing with an immense speed and then stopped, right in front of me. Maybe just a meter away. I stood there, digging my boots slowly into the clay. The stubborn old fool that I am. My gun aimed right at its ghastly corpse face. And a weird calm then settled over me. Maybe I knew I wouldn't leave, at least not by sunrise. I started talking, desperate and grim, not caring if the words made sense. Easy now. People will come, I told her. Investigators, crews, will burn this place right down to its roots. My voice sounded small and distant, but she edged closer, lips peeled back to reveal jagged, broken teeth. But behind her, more hunched shapes rised from the crowded weeds. I caught myself shaking my head, pushing the terror down, and forcing my hands to stop trembling. This wasn't a lone mistake, or a monster's den. This was a colony. My foot suddenly slipped on a root that I had my foot propped against. I briefly looked down, and in that split second, this massive creature lunged at me, and I instinctively pulled the trigger, sending a screaming bullet through the creature's forehead, exposing its blood, brain, and bone, in one violent moment of terror. The shot exploded from the back of its head all over the ground behind it, and the creature slumped where it stood, like a sack of beef dropped to the ground in a plastic grocery bag. I then ran, not with hope or reason, but just the panic need to outpace the things that wanted to keep me in the dark with them forever. I reached the edge of that clearing. My chest was burning and my heart thudding, and by some dumb, staggering luck, I stumbled back onto the crushed trail where the broken rides marked the edges of the park. The lights of Shawnee's dead midway glimmered through the downpour. But even as I made it out, I could hear the other creatures screaming through the night. Luckily, they did not pursue me far, but I could still see them taking glimpses at me through the tall underbrush and tree cover. By the time I found my way back to the main yard, adrenaline had burned off and left nothing else to give. If there was an end to this, I didn't feel any closer to it. I just felt more lost. The rain had laid a gloss across the broken asphalt. Every light glimmered twice, the whole place doubling in on itself. Hell, I half expected to look down and see my own boots reflected, but only saw darkness there, broken here and there by creeping weeds. Staggering toward the remains of the old concession stand, I took stock. My gun nearly empty, phone drained by a useless search for a signal, and every instinct in me, the ones that had gotten me through 2 decades of grief and the worse in this job, screamed to get the hell out of there. Call the National Guard. But no, I stayed. I was tired, cold, miserable, and had to figure out how to deal with the remaining creatures. I leaned hard against the splintered counter. But just then, I heard a kid's voice. It was thin and shaking. A real voice, not imagined, and it cut through the din. Help! It was the barest whisper. It took effort to make myself move, slow and low, hands sinking into my pocket for my knife. I inched around the corner and found her. Big eyes, hair all matted, her bruised knees tucked to her chest for warmth. Maybe 7, 8 years old, perhaps. Looked like an Appalachian local. My brain did a flip, toggling between professional and horror, cop and animal. Hey. Holy shit. It's all right, I'm a detective. She didn't answer at first, just kept glancing to the glassless window, as if she expected something much larger than me to come slithering in. Detective, a police officer. And she finally stammered. Others. In the ground. Her words broke at the end like brittle twigs. I offered my hand and she took it. I hauled her up with a quick glance over my shoulder. We slipped together past the row of games, her heels tapping soft on the warped ground, until a fresh howl tore the air and every hair on my arms tried to stand up. The creatures were watching, hurting us again. I understood then that none of this was an accident or coincidence. They knew this place better than I did, and each wrong step drew us closer to where they'd fed, buried, and thrived. We ran, my grip on the kid's hand vice tight. I heard her struggling to keep up, her breath small and ragged, but we didn't stop, not until we crashed hard through a gap in the outer fence. And behind us, the woods were alive and writhing, and they let out one last cacophony. Just as quickly as it had begun, the world outside was normal, if you could call empty parking lots in a dead town normal. The rain let up, my legs buckled under me in the grass as the kids sobbed. Now, the sirens never sounded so far away. I fumbled for my phone out of habit, a reflex stronger than sense, and I watched the black glass reflect only my own hollowed-eyed stare. No bars, no message, nothing but fried circuits under a dripping sky. My grip on the girl was slipping. Both of our hands were filthy and ice-cold. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I was running through protocols in my head. Missing persons, trauma, what to do if you can't call it in, and you can't run any further. But small-town training doesn't prep you for this. The girl clung to my sleeve with the mindless persistence of a child who hasn't yet realized how close she'd come to death. Her eyes darted over the empty expanse. On the far end of the cracked lot, the county cruiser sat like a tombstone, dark and lonesome under a busted streetlight. I half led and half pulled her in that direction. I was careful not to look at the park entrance. The woods back there had gone still, and when I finally got the back door of the cruiser open, the kid climbed in quickly, curled tight on the seat. Now, she didn't let go of my wrist until I physically pulled away, promising, "I'm not leaving. We're just getting the hell out of here." With the keys finally in the ignition, the dash flickered to life. We drove until town lights cut through the dark, until the shapes outside our windows blurred to smears of sodium vapor in the warped curve of the Ohio River. The girl cried herself dry. I didn't ask much. Well, just her first name, Lydia, her age, 8 years old, why she was out there. Well, she'd come with an uncle to check out the spooky place. He was gone and she wouldn't give me any more details, and I didn't press it. We would need a child psychologist, the DA, and all sorts of other governmental shit and people to make this all right. My main focus was just to try to get her to a safe place where she could be evaluated. Headquarters kept their word in a way. Shawnee was padlocked, new chain link outside the border of the old fence, signs everywhere. Unsafe structure, they declared. And night after night, local sheriff's deputy drove a lazy loop past the gate, flashed their lamps into blackness, and get back to their coffee and their phones. I've seen the new records, each report brushed off, each strange footprint quietly redacted. Not one official search crew since mine, not after what Lydia and I experienced in there. That's not to say that they didn't search. I mean, hell yeah, they searched. They went all over that place. After I got down the road a bit, I radioed dispatch, and every cop in a 50-mile radius came down on that place hard. They found the gore beast that I blew the head off of, although there were chunks of flesh ripped from it. Perhaps the other ones wanted a quick snack. Other than that, the fire pit bones and the other bits of bones around the park, they didn't find much else. And it would take the DNA analysis months before they could test whose bones they belonged to. After the feds arrived, they brushed it all under wraps. They told everyone involved to keep their mouths shut. They even took what was left of the creature's corpse with them. But I guess that's Point Pleasant for you. Truth and folklore, braided together so tight you cannot tell which one is which. I left the force within 6 months. It wasn't a dramatic resignation. I didn't go to my boss and say, "Screw it, I'm done." Just emptied the desk drawers, quick handshake, and the official saying, "Don't you ever bring this up again." My replacement even asked once about that night. Only once. I shrugged, pulled out my deposit slip from my government cover-up check, and I showed him it and said, "You think I would piss this away for some silly story? Don't you think for one moment that those rumors you hear are true?" I lied, obviously. That NDA was tight as my butthole. About 60 other officers and officials were paid off after witnessing the corpse and the aftermath. Hell, I wasn't about to say shit. I do see Lydia sometimes, out walking with her foster mom. She's grown. Her hair's a little neater. She doesn't flinch when strangers cross her path. I don't know if it's because her mind blocked out that part of the night, or perhaps they got a big check as well. She seems normal enough, and we never talk about it, but we still have lunch on occasion. I guess you could say we have an unspeakable bond. But all I could hope for, really, the best any of us can hope for, is that whatever's been buried at Shawnee Amusement Park doesn't crawl back up into the world, dragging us down with it.